Hello and welcome to my presentation about adult life with ADHD by Ahazz Khan. Next slide. So, what is ADHD? ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is a chronic condition including attention difficulty, hyperactivity, impulsiveness, and impulsiveness. ADHD's formation is believed to be caused by a number of factors, those being genetics and brain function or structure. Specifically for brain function, it's the lack of the neurotransmitter dopamine. ADHD in children usually affects their ability to learn in school, as they might have trouble paying attention or be overly disruptive in class, leading to punishment. They would also have trouble learning social skills or forming relationships due to these same symptoms. ADHD comes in a variety of forms, as it can have an emphasis on inattentiveness rather than hyperactivity, and vice versa, with an emphasis on hyperactivity rather than inattentiveness. It can even be a combination of the both. So here's some common ADHD symptoms within children and in adults. For children, they take a long time to complete their assignments, they have trouble staying on task, and they have difficulty sitting still. In adults, they have trouble listening during conversations, maybe during meetings, they become bored very easily, and they take a long time to complete work-related tasks. So for both of these, for both children and adults, the symptoms remain fairly similar, regardless, even despite the age gap, which is something of note. So, yes, there are downsides to ADHD. Obviously, it's not fun having to feel different from everybody else and not being able to get your work done and being stressed out about that. While ADHD's challenges are definitely difficult to overcome, there are a number of upsides to having the condition. As the disorder effectively rewires how one's brain works, people with ADHD have a completely unique perspective upon the world. They quite literally think outside of the box. A unique perspective combined with the ability to hyperfocus or put all of one's focus onto a singular something allows people with ADHD to find new hobbies and improve their skills at those hobbies in a very short amount of time. Adults with ADHD also display levels of resilience, as being functionally different to most other human beings requires a level of resilience from the get go. The obstacles that they have to overcome simply to lead ordinary lives allows them to build stronger characters and become resilient as they mature. So, for example, as I said before, being different and being stressed out from assignments and all these feelings about your condition and stuff like that, it really weighs someone down. And overcoming that and coping with those challenges lends you a lot of resilience early on in your life. If you have ADHD, that is. So, while it was stated earlier that the children with ADHD might have difficulty in developing social skills, adults with ADHD have overcome these social challenges, and have become very talkative individuals. So, people with ADHD, as stated before, have a lot of different perspectives, and those perspectives turn into talking points, which snowball into deep conversations with other people. Also, with a unique perspective comes a level of creativity not found in neurotypical individuals. Neurotypical meaning people whose brains have formed normally and they act normal. Lastly, because of the level of resilience needed to cope with ADHD, those with it have increased levels of empathy and find it easier to empathize with others in their situation as well as other situations. This also lends to a level of increased self awareness within adults with ADHD, specifically of their condition. And by this, I mean that adults with ADHD are very self aware of that. Their tendency to hyperfocus or lose track of things or ignore people or stuff like that. Next slide. So here's an infographic about ADHD superpowers, quote unquote. This is what people call them: the creative problem solving, the increased curiosity, large imagination, increased willingness to take risks, strong intuition, boundless energy, great sense of humor, laser focus, empathy, enthusiasm, and talented multitaskers. So this infographic does a good job of selling the good parts of ADHD, albeit it's a bit too, optimistic about it. There's obviously downsides to it, um, but it still does, a good job of saying that these are the good things with ADHD. Excuse me. So, how does someone live with ADHD? It's difficult to answer that kind of question because it's the kind of question that seems more patronizing than inquisitive, as people live with all manners of disadvantages or disabilities, yet still are able to lead fulfilling lives. How someone deals with the condition is entirely unique to them. For some people, it's just a series of simple rituals that they have to do before doing certain tasks, and for others, it's strong medication that helps them facilitate normal attention and achieve levels of normalcy in their otherwise ordinary lives. Even so, ADHD is a condition where symptoms are generic to an extent. What worked for someone else might still work for you or I. The attention deficit can be solved by ways to bring attention back to topic, like pinching someone or cold ice or something like that. The hyperactivity can be mitigated by allowing stimming through fidget spinners or ADHD specific toys to facilitate something to fidget with while in class or a meeting. Those examples being this fidget cube and this fidget spinner on screen right now. Next slide. So, is there a way to cure it? No. Currently, there is no feasible way to cure someone of ADHD. There have been propositions by wealthy people in order to attempt to fix it with brain chips and whatnot, but it's still early in its development, that being Neuralink, owned by Elon Musk. However, in my opinion, I don't believe ADHD is something that anyone should attempt to cure or fix. When people say that, there's this negative connotation towards it or associated with it, as if there's something wrong with someone, or as if they have some kind of debilitating disease that is sapping all the joy from their life. Oh, boo hoo, you have ADHD. That's not true. It is definitely not that bad. ADHD is just a part of the way someone is born. It's not their fault that they were born into a world that doesn't help them deal with it well. It's not their fault that they were born into a world that has so many stigmas against mental health in the first place. ADHD is the most diagnosed mental disorder within children and adolescents. It should not be framed as something bad, but as another part of life that people have to overcome. There are upsides and downsides, and doing our best to mitigate those downsides and allow the upsides to blossom is the best way of approaching the issue of curing, quote unquote, ADHD. The best way to cure ADHD is to let it be something normal rather than something different. And here comes the more personal side of the presentation. The reason I chose this topic was more because I've been on this path into discovering more parts of myself. I'd say sometime in 2020, the middle of 2020, I realized that I had been a lifelong not victim, but I've had ADHD for a long, long time of my life. And finally putting the pieces together helped me open up a lot of avenues in my life. I've had friends in the past, longtime friends who've had ADHD, much more hyperactive than I am. I'm more the inattentive type. But now that I think back on those things, living as a student, as a young adult with ADHD has been difficult, but it's still reassuring to know that there are things I can do to help myself. Specifically, me leaving this presentation, recording it at the very last minute. Very ADHD thing to do, but there's a lot of passion I've put into this. And I hope that this personal story and, it gets the point across that ADHD is not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing either. It's just another part of life that people have to live with. It's something that I have to live with. It's something that my friends have to live with. It's something that some of my ancestors had to live with, and it's something that people just have to live with. That concludes my presentation. I hope that I got my point across. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.